How many fatherless homes are there out there?
Way too many.
How many of those fathers that aren't at home are actually paying support?
I don't know the stats.
I don't know the stats either, but it's it's not the majority. I know that.
Predisposition does not mean a natural tendency. Predisposition means there's like a yearning for it. There's like and it's not yearnings aren't always clear. It could just be a feeling like a heavy feel like depression. So if you could press a button or press something on your body that says, tell me what this depressive feeling is coming from, and it revealed exactly what it was, then you'd be able to sort of deal with it. But what I meant by biological predisposition is not like a thing that you know why you feel this way, but it's more of like some sort of subconscious that goes back to, again, your gene pool, your evolutionary things, and paying child support. Like, in my opinion, how some of these roles have come into modern society, especially Western, is not what the biology is looking for. Like, paying child support is not necessarily the same as protecting and providing, because money is an agreement. Money is not an actual thing. It's an agreement.
Expressions of love,
What's up, beautiful people of the world? It is your host, Soul Expression, on the Expression of Love podcast. I'm very happy that you are still here rocking out with us. Today, I am talking with a brother by the name of Kyle Hamer. Kyle Hamer is really cool dude. He knows firsthand the struggles that so many men today face, from isolation and loneliness to depression to nice guy syndrome. He spent over a decade reading all the books, going to all the seminars, and signing up for all the courses and programs that he could, with little to no change in the quality of his own life. He had all the information with very little transformation. And it was only when he started honoring himself and surrounding himself with other men who could call his shit out and hold him accountable that his life started to turn around. And now Kyle is a community builder at Man Becoming, an executive community for men who are ready to actually level up and become the man that they know they are meant to be. He knows from experience the best way to be more, do more, and have more is to grow together as a group. And he says the days of the lone wolf are over. And me and Kyle had a great conversation. We did largely focus on men's mental health and uplifting community through some of the solutions being through uplifting men and the image that men hold in society, as well as the image that we hold within our own self. We as men hold within our own self, right? Your self-image, and having courage to build upon your self-esteem, knowing that that's going to take struggle and all of that. So we had a great conversation. I really hope that you enjoy it. Definitely check it out. Like and subscribe if you have not already had the chance. Look out for the expression of rhyme portion of this episode. I hope you like it. And yeah, man, I will talk to you all in the comments. Check it out. 2, 1. Hello, everybody in the world, in the wide world out there. Welcome back to the Expression of Love podcast. It is your host, Soul Expression, indeed, and I'm having a very, very wonderful day. But some of you out there may not be having such a wonderful day, and some of you out there are tuning into this episode of the Expression of Love podcast for that very reason. So let's uplift you right now in the best way that we can. I'm sitting here with Mr. Kyle Hamer.
Hamer, yes.
Hamer. Yes, I thought so, but might have been, Mr. Kyle Hamer. We're going to talk mental health. We are going to talk the state of being that is optimal for all humans, but we're going to focus a little bit on men today. Kyle, how you doing, man? Say what's up
I,
to the peeps.
I am doing fabulous, and your energy has replaced my coffee, man. I like it. I like it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I try to, at least start out pretty high so that if I mellow out somewhere, it's still relatively, uplifting, if you will. And I was really intrigued when I saw your post on Facebook in the group that we're both in, and I said, okay, this is somebody I definitely want to bring on and talk to because I suffered with suicidal depression myself a couple years ago. Um, what what brought me out was a moment right before what was going to be my attempt, but it wasn't going to be an attempt. It was going to do the job, if you will. And I hope I'm not being too insensitive here. But right before I did it, you could say, I heard some sort of spiritual voice come and basically say, "What about one more day?" And and the impact that had, it was not my voice. You know how sometimes you think in your voice. This was not my voice. I can't really give it attributes like if it was feminine or masculine voice or if it sounded like my mom or grandma. It didn't. It was just. It was less vocal and more intuitive, right? And it showed
Usually,
up and it kind of said, "Well, what about one more day?"
usually I hear about that, and it's more of a whisper.
Something, yeah, something
Yeah,
very subtle, very subtle.
yeah.
And in the midst of, like my tears and my sitting there fiddling with, the trigger, it made sense. It was like, well, one more day, okay, one more day. But then the next day, it made sense that one more day was not about tomorrow. It was about just what it is, one more day. And I think a lot of times when we want to quit the game called life, when we want to exit and just not deal with it and not face it anymore, it's because we feel like, or really we believe that our victimhood is permanent. Our situation is unchangeable and helpless and hopeless. And that uh, and we back it up with evidence. Well, if it was going to change, then shit by now should have. And these kinds of things is what we say, and what I was saying at the time. And since then, what has more heavily impacted me more than anything is the practice of meditation. Um, I'm a meditation coach, and just to give a little words to what meditation is, and I'm gonna bring you in with a question. For the audience, meditation, in my understanding and in my practice and in my experience, can be boiled down to one word, and that word is awareness. It's not about looking a certain kind of way. It's not about forcing your mind to stop showing you images or sending you sounds. It's not about your body being completely comfortable or asleep while you're awake and alert. It's about awareness. It's about being aware of what is, not what is dot dot dot, just what is. And so I'd like to start off by asking you, um, have you done like work with meditation and talk to brothers that have experienced similar experiences about meditation at all, or you more so deal with it in different ways?
The amount of times that I've heard somebody say that meditation saved my life or changed my life, I've lost track. It's an incredible amount of people. For me, it is not being a daily practice. It's something that I know is very valuable, and I really should. I use the word should, um, but it's not the right word.
Hmm.
It is something that I would like to start doing more of. I do find that I have an unusually quiet mind.
Okay.
So I think maybe that's why for me it almost feels redundant because I don't necessarily have that really hyperactive mind and the thoughts that are looping. Um, but that being said, I know my partner, she's very much in that space of she'll go to say something to me and it's like five things come out of her mouth and none of them are related and it's all one sentence, right? Um, and if anybody, I don't know if you've read or listened to the book, I highly recommend listening to it. But for anybody who questions what meditation is or has their doubts of like, well, my neuroticism is what makes me sharp and what keeps me really going, and it's how I function. And if I didn't have that, there's a book called 10% Happier,
Okay.
and it is, it really speaks to, you know, going from that place of what is this thing called meditation? Why would anybody do it? This whole thing is stupid. Sit there and calm your mind and like that's stupid. Why would I do that? Eventually coming through to the other side and realizing that, oh my God, wait a minute. When my mind is silent, I don't lose my edge. I actually gain an edge. I sleep better. I'm happier. I'm more present. Um, and all those thoughts kind of become theater.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really go away, but they just become theater, as you were saying. It's that awareness. It's just watching the thoughts as opposed to believing the thoughts.
Yep. And I don't mean this as a correction, but watching the watcher of those thoughts,
Well, yeah, exactly.
because you really don't want to hold any self-image,
Yeah.
which is a big part of the misconceptions of meditation that I've come across in my own experience, and being a coach and whatnot. There's this automatic belief that watching my thoughts means like there's me watching my thoughts, but release the me, just, and the watch it, like, don't call it anything, just, you are here, you're here, you can't even deny that you're here because you would have to be here to say I'm not here, right? You're here. And so just in that space where all there is awareness, being with that, and allowing that to sort of be enough, is the key. Yeah.
And I think for me, I think my version of reaching that state
Mm-hmm.
comes more through breath work.
Mm. Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
that's definitely one of the most popular doors, and it works.
yeah, especially when you do that kind of the Wim Hof breathing, right? Where
That
you know
intense.
you're doing the super intense, and then you breathe out all your air, so your lungs are absolutely empty, and then you hold your breath, or hold your kind of opposite of holding your breath, holding your
Mm-hmm.
your empty lungs. And when I'm doing it, especially when I'm laying down, it's they all say that we're made of stardust, like we are the universe, sort of thing. And I find that when I do that, I literally get the visuals and the body feel of everything, of just like floating through a galaxy.
Hmm.
It's such a wild ride for me. um and that's where I feel like I get my grounded. It's not so much about the meditation, but it's about that
Mm-hmm.
connecting, like connecting with the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the Buddha said, nirvana is only useful if everybody gets it, basically. So that's why, because they said, Jordan Peterson talked about this. He said, when the Buddha reached nirvana, he was tempted by, and I love that word tempted in spiritual talk, but he was tempted by the opportunity to stay there, to stay in this state of nirvana, basically die in the most highest sort of spiritual state, the stateless state, as they call it in the eastern parts of the world. And he said, no, this is wonderful, but it's only useful if everybody gets it. And so he came back and decided to sort of teach, which teach, is a kind of a loaded word, but to teach, to be the example, to say very things about the human experience that people can understand 2,500 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think teach has an interesting word because I think that we've, speaking of Eastern Western, I think that in today's, more industrial, well, started industrial, now it's just super capitalistic society, is that teach means to put a bunch of useless knowledge into somebody's head,
Right.
whereas the traditional word of teach really means I show you the way, right? Like it's almost like a Yoda thing, right? Like I show you the way. It's do as I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mentor, mentee, apprentice, master, not so much information and group. Yeah,
In
absolutely.
information test.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you for that. That was cool. Cool little dive into meditation. But I think when um, when addressing men's health, men's mental health, right? Really health in general, because honestly, and it sounds cliche, but when these guys who have a certain level of self mastery talk about daily exercise, good nutrition, no matter what that nutrition is, whether it's plant based, meat based, in between based, herbs based, whatever, the fruit only. Some people only do fruit and still. But when they talk about these things, taking walks where you're just sort of alone, but you may have a family, but you come back, but where you sort of controlled isolation, if you will. These things are very powerful, but they're not powerful the first 3 times you do them. Excuse me. They're powerful after they become the norm in your neurological makeup. When they become normal, somehow something shifts. But in order to really understand men's mental health, we have to first understand men, right? And I think there's a lot of I'm scared to say propaganda. There's a lot of media based rhetoric that may mislead boys and girls and women and men, right? To think that we are something that we're not, or that we have that certain traits that we have are bad, or something like that, where there's a misconception of what a man is. So in your general understanding, and in the context of men's mental health, what is mentally healthy for your average dude?
I don't even know if you can answer that. I really don't know if you
Fair
can
enough.
answer that. I think that um, speaking from that place of, I know in your philosophy, like the philosophy that you kind of follow, in that spiritual space is more of, what you were talking about, it just, I am,
Hmm.
right? And I think that if we are living from that place of I am, and that I am is authentic,
Right.
that's where mental health is, like, like a healthy space is found. I am I'm controversial, I guess, to many. I'm pretty sure that about 50% of the US would um absolutely light me up for my opinions, and I'm okay with that. And it's not just men, I'm talking men and women.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason I say that is that um we always hear the, by, especially by, the more feminist movement and stuff, we hear patriarchy thrown out all the time. And my view is that men are, the patriarchy is the father.
Right.
And there's a lot of feminists out there, there's a lot of women, there's a lot of people out there who buy into this idea that if you are a male, if you have a penis, you are the patriarchy. But the reality
Yeah.
is that we are the sons and the daughters of the patriarchy. We are the sons of the father. They are the daughters of the father. As such, I don't know if you've got siblings, but, you know, every sibling had different advantages than you did, and you had different advantages than they did, and you each had your own set of struggles. That is what is really going on. But the problem is that because in society, men have these inherent advantages, whether it's money, security, safety, what have you, even political, because we have these advantages. When we try, when is the key word, and
Mhm.
if a man ever does try to talk about it, about what they're going through, what their struggle is, how often is it met with, "Oh my God, you have no idea. You're a dude. Do you know how many advantages you got? Don't even."
How
Right?
privileged you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happens is that as a society, we deny men the reality that we have a struggle, because
Right.
apparently we have to play the comparison game that your struggle is not as great as my struggle, and
Right.
therefore your struggle doesn't matter.
It's called the oppression Olympics.
Pretty much, yeah. And so to come back to the question that you asked about,
Mhm.
what does good men's mental health look
Right.
like?
What is mentally healthy for men? Right.
To me, it's breaking free from those, from the patriarch, from those social constructs or social contracts that we all kind of bought into. And I'm not talking about just men, but
Hmm.
women as well,
Hmm.
right? So and what happens is, like, under that, what that looks like under that patriarchy is, it's that, as soon as you're, 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe even 4 or 5, depending on the house you grew up in, where, you know that affection that you got as a kid from your mother or your father starts to go away, and it starts to become harder because you're the boy. So if you got a sister in the house, she still gets that affection all the way through, but at a very young age, boys are cut off from that because he's a boy. He needs to be a man. We need to wean him off of that. So right from a very young age, we often get, not all the time, but we often get starved for that real connection and affection. And then on top of that, we're told, don't cry, don't show emotion, don't complain, man up, grow a pair, right? And
Hmm.
then as you get even older, all of a sudden you have to have all the answers. You have to have your shit figured out all the time. You have to be the provider. You have to be the protector, and it just goes on and on and on. You have to be, a sexual god in the bedroom, right? Like, there's so many expectations that are placed on men as to what an ideal man is
Early.
early. And these expectations aren't real.
Right.
It's not, going back to that, I am.
Hmm.
Well, how can I be? How can I be if I'm not allowed to feel? How
Mm.
am I supposed to be in a relationship if I'm not allowed to be, you know, attached in any way? If I'm completely detached from myself, how can I possibly be with somebody else?
Right.
If the only emotions I can name are happy and angry, right?
Right.
So I believe that, kind of coming back full circle to the very beginning of the conversation, whether or not we're talking about, um, when we're talking about, like, meditation in the state and that Buddha about, like, it's only useful if everybody's on board. Um, we have feminist movements, we have, um, for there's, I know there's a lot of controversy, but there's Black Lives Matters, there's all these movements around the world, Me Too movement, and it's all based on, female rights, equal opportunity, safety and security of, for women, for their
Mhm.
to walk in public and not get,
Right.
raped or whatever. um and racism, like all of this, I believe, starts with acknowledging the fact that men have struggles, because in reality, who are the perpetrators of most of these things? And I don't say that as a means to knock men. This is not a call to toxic masculinity. This is just pointing out a fact. I mean, I'm in Canada, you're in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But we watch the news all the time. And every time we hear the news of like, oh, there's another shooter, it's a male every single time, 100%. Right?
Yeah.
So it's as if we're in a space where we want to, like, everybody wants to address these issues, but they don't want to talk about the elephant in the room.
Which is that we are that a lot is expected of us and put on our shoulders, and with all the pressure, we don't get the necessary means to express what that feels like, and means to talk to highly educated people about how to process these pressures and these things, because some of the expectations are well-meaning, right? Not everything that's well-meaning is actually good for you, but it can be well-meaning, and because we do have men and women do have certain um, biological predispositions to certain things that some of the things you name: protect your home, your family, spread your seed. Certain things are in us because evolution, although it's cyclical and it's not necessarily straight linear, it plays a part, right? We are programmable things just like all other life.
Or does it? Or does it?
Okay, well,
And
what's
and
okay?
and let me
Yeah.
provide an example for you.
All right, my good people of the wide world, you know what time it is when you get this interruption in the middle of an Expression of Love interview. Man, it is time for the expression of rhyme. That's right. It's time for the segment of my podcast where I interject a rap verse into the conversation that me and my guests are having and touch on one or more of the points that we are talking about. And with this verse here, dive a little bit into some of the things that affect men's mental health. I hope you enjoy it. Like and subscribe if you have not already had the chance. Check this out. So how can we make it so that men get right in their mental? In a country where leftists are claiming men can be menstrual, give birth and have babies, but the second we get to creating our own spaces, they complain, they resentful. Depression high as hell, interest in marriage getting lower. Figure we might as well isolate until it's over and just stay by ourselves. Couldn't imagine getting closer to the women that go out and tell that men in America don't need a wholesome relationship. But we all need each other, biologically predisposed to how nature see each other. Yes, we play our roles. That don't put us in a box. You can be whatever you want, but collectively, we brothers and sisters under God. Something I can't deny. United, we stand tall, and with grace, we can fly. With hatred and division, we just fall into the depths with no steps to bring us back into that castle in the sky. To understand men's mental health, understand man. To understand man, you got to understand mind. To understand mind, you got to look within your heart. In your heart, you'll understand that what you're seeing is divine. And shout out to Kyle for today's conversation. It inspired these lyrics I'm throwing into rotation. So pass your favorite line around like it's a blunt and show them how we get down on the expression of love. Now we move back to your regularly scheduled program.
How many fatherless homes are there out there?
Way too many.
How many of those fathers that aren't at home are actually paying support?
Well, I don't know the stats.
I don't know the stats either, but it's not the majority. I know that. There's a lot of men out there that are not paying child support. Like and even if it's not the majority, it's probably close to that break even point. So if it's so inherent in us as men to be the protector and provider, then why are we not protecting and providing over our families?
Well, that's what I was going to. Okay, I get your point in terms of when you said, or is it? A predisposition does not mean a natural tendency. Predisposition means there's like a yearning for it. There's like, and it's not, yearnings aren't always clear. It could just be a feeling, like a heavy feel, like depression. So if you could press a button or press something on your body that says, tell me what this depressive feeling is coming from, and it revealed exactly what it was, then you'd be able to sort of deal with it. But what I meant by biological predisposition is not like a thing that you know why you feel this way, but it's more of like some sort of subconscious that goes back to, again, your gene pool, your evolutionary things, and paying child support. Like, in my opinion, how some of these roles have come into modern society, especially Western, is not what the biology is looking for. Like, paying child support is not necessarily the same as protecting and providing, because money is an agreement. Money is not an actual thing. It's an agreement, right? The reason gold has value now is not because it can conduct electricity and it's because it's shiny and people said, let's agree that this has value. And that's so providing, is conflated with serving the entities that want your free labor. Like, does that make sense?
No, and I get that, and that's a very valid point.
Mhm.
I think it was, and I understand a little more about what you're talking about, the predisposition.
Yeah.
Um, I think though that there's an element there of freedom of choice. And what I mean by that is, um, if you're told you can't have something, what do you want? You
Hmm.
want the thing,
Right.
right? But if you have the freedom of choice and you just said, I don't want the thing because I'd rather have, or I just don't want the thing, then it's really easy to make that choice.
Right.
And I think that I believe that when it comes to what we're talking about, there's that expectation that you are the provider and you are the protector and you are all the things. And it's the Titanic idea, right?
Hmm.
If the boat goes down, the men are going down with the boat.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
And it actually goes really deep into the patriarchal system, because how would they ever send men off to war if we didn't have this idea of this?
Well, and is war only human? No. Is war older than human? Yes. At least in terms of what I've been exposed to. War, not only primates either, like ants. Like, the war is bad, but and dangerous, but it's not new, and it's evolved with us. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of people that believe that the whole pandemic crisis, one after another, that's seeming to be popping up, is a form of warfare. And I'm not Alex Jones, but there's a lot of little nuggets and pieces that people point to. It's like, well, if I knew more about it, I might jump down that rabbit hole, but and so is it really? I have a question. Is it what should we be teaching our men and boys and our society as a whole? Like, should we say that the world is a nice place that's fair and only good people and non-dangerous environments exist in it? Or should we teach the not necessarily the opposite in terms of the extreme, but like the that the world has in it, right? A large population of narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, and that and warfare is, although we hate it, very natural. Battle is within all animal kingdom, and that roles, although people can be influenced into, sort of misbehaving, roles are not inherently bad because community can make roles work well, and when people come together, and there's more education and less room for just, blind manipulation by Hollywood or what have you, right? But whoever's doing the influencing, Instagram, OnlyFans, whatever, right? When there's less room for that because there's more of a focus on communing, and I don't mean tribal, I just mean communing, like just being in your community where all the parents know each other, all the kids know each other, the families can work together, kids can one or two families can have a lawnmower. Not everybody needs one, and the kids can do certain things. And when somebody needs a bookshelf, some of the fathers get together, they do their thing, they have a good time. That community is, I think, what's being targeted, and the family also, I think, is being targeted by the bad guys, if you will. Because I don't think roles are inherently bad. I can't see how they're inherently sort of a bad thing, but I do see that they're mis that certain influences can make, like, let's say, patriarchal roles into a misogynistic thing.
Yeah.
I asked you a question and then said like a lot afterwards. I'm sorry about that.
There's a lot there. Let me just start by, okay. When you talk about war and you talk about, people, and then you're saying it predates people and it predates the species.
Mhm.
What I believe, and it's more of a reframe, is we call it war. The animal kingdom would call it survival.
Hmm.
Right? So that's the big difference. An army of ants would take over another army of ants because the other army of ants probably was either a threat to their existence or they had the better territory, right? Like they had better ground, they had more food, they had more water, they had more something. And almost always when you see any kind of battles in wildlife, in Mother Nature, it's about survival.
Hmm.
In people, it's beliefs, it's religion, it's money, it's never about survival. And I think that's unless you're the one defending. So I think that's a big difference. Yes, it's always been there, but the why has changed. Back, 500 years ago, I'm sure that there would have been those battles because it would have been survival. These people have the food, they have, like if you're up in the high ground, you need the low ground, to grow crops because you're in a drought. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Also about roles, I 100% agree with you on roles. Everybody has a role to play. There is no good without bad. And I got a couple friends who are massive Batman fans. And the you can argue that one of the things that makes Batman so cool is the fact that he doesn't have superpowers.
Right. Yeah.
He's
Hmm.
got $1 billion and a big tech firm behind him, though, so he kind of does have superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What makes Batman so good is the Joker.
Yes. Also, right. 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 Hmm.
When you look at when you think Batman, it's almost the immediate response is Joker. When you think Spider-Man, who do you think of? Well, it could be a
Right.
number of people.
Could
When
be
you think
right.
of Superman, it could be a number of people. Batman is synonymous with Joker, and Joker is synonymous with Batman, which is why it does so well. And that, I mean, that's why, when Heath Ledger played the Joker, it was so successful because you bought into the bad guy. He was so believable.
He said, "I'm a dog chasing cars. Wouldn't know what to do with one if I actually caught it." And then Alfred says, "Some people just want to watch the world burn," and told the story about the guy who was stealing tons of money in the form of gems and just throwing them.
Yeah. Lights it on fire. So I think that, when it comes to roles, we can't know what love is unless we've experienced the other side of that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the life is on a spectrum, and one of my mentors, Jim Rohn, he talks about the idea of, I would rather tie myself to somebody as passionately opposed to what I believe than somebody who is apathetic and doesn't care. He's like, I will take the person that's passionate about something any day. Because the great thing about that is that passion, even if it's in the way of destruction, can be swayed to the way of the good. But if you're apathetic, nothing's going to change. So I love the idea of roles. I love the idea of passion. Now, you would ask the question around, what do we do?
What do we teach them? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The answer is very conceptually, it's very simple. And it's kind of the philosophy I'm trying to live by. Both and. You can be, whether you're a boy or a man, it doesn't matter. You can be a boy and play with dolls and still remain a boy and still remain valid. You can be a man who likes to wear high heels or paint your fingernails. Even if you're like in a, classic business suit, tie, everything,
Right.
and you wear stilettos, I don't know, or you paint your fingernails, you can still be manly. And I say manly in the sense of not what we buy into as the, current manly, but I just mean like,
not chatty. Mm-hmm.
it doesn't take away from your state of being a man.
Right.
You are not less than because you choose to express yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that is where it starts, is embracing the boy who has a natural inclination to express themselves differently in a way that doesn't fit the system, and embrace it and encourage it instead of tearing them down and putting them in that tiny little box that says, you can't be those things. This is what you have to be. And then they end up at, 30 something years old, or even in their 20s, depressed, addicted, miserable, who knows, maybe even violent.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, I don't know what happened to them. They were such a good kid. Well, their entire identity was essentially taken away from them. They were told, you can't be who you are. You have to pretend to be somebody you're not for the rest of your life. And then we wonder where the resentment comes from.
It's a slippery slope. I believe, I agree, excuse me, with most of that, but no one can say, like, I wrote something that sort of helped me get through some of these thoughts, because compassionately I feel for the movement towards allowing for certain levels of self-expression in younger and younger and younger and younger categories, but then I also have very, very passionate disagreements with certain things happening in the schools and with big pharma and big surgery when it comes to the transgender movement and the fluid gender talking points. When it comes to children, not when it comes to 25 and older, but when it comes to children. And I want to see if I can find this thing because it helped me, get through the thoughts a little bit.
And while you're looking for that, again, just kind of a bit of an opportunity here for a bit of a challenge on that.
Okay.
Is when is a 4-year-old child not present?
What do you mean not present?
Like you were talking about when we first got on the call, we were talking about, the state of being, the state of awareness.
Okay.
Right. So if you look at a 3-year, especially if you look at like a 3 or 4-year-old child, when are they not in the present moment?
I would have to probably know a little more about the psychology and neurology of the whole thing, but I would guess present more than an adult. Does that make sense?
I mean, at especially at like, that younger age, that 2-3 years old.
The innocent ages, yeah.
There is no future to them.
Right.
You say in 10 minutes, they don't know what that means.
Right.
They only know, like, it's like an on-off switch. They only know if it is or it isn't right now.
But when we talk about self-expression, not to cut you off, but I think I know what you're saying. When we talk about self-expression and then we talk about clothing and fingernails and things, that's not expressing self. That's expressing something that you're either seeing or that you have a spontaneous interest in. And children's spontaneous interests are all over the place because there's no tomorrow, because there's no 10 minutes from now. And so the wording of who you are is, I think, what can become dangerous, not what is dangerous, but what can become detrimental in the long run, because it can create a sort of crisis, identity crises, where there really wouldn't have been one if there was a more universal way of speaking about it. It's like when there's something I saw where it said, stop asking your child what's wrong with you when they're crying, because what's wrong with you, what's wrong with you, what's wrong with you, every time you have, some emotional or physical pain, seeps into the programming in a certain kind of way that has them asking themselves the same question and not getting an answer back, because their God, which is your parents at first, kept asking this question that implied something they didn't mean to imply. And so that sort of same principle goes with the expressing who you are or who you really are, and these type of things to children. It can accidentally have negative effect. And I found the thing, but I want to let you respond first.
Yeah. So I to kind of ask you a question on that is, I guess it's a 2-part question. One is, what if the kids are allowed to do that though? They're just in that moment. They're allowed to do whatever it is that they're drawn to, without that feedback that it is a good thing, bad thing, masculine, feminine, whatever.
Right.
It's just a thing that they do.
Okay.
Right. So what does that look like over time? If we are allowed to express, I say express, but we are allowed to explore.
Yeah, I got
all
you.
of those things without the labels.
So that's the first part, or that is the question?
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of the first question is, what would that look like?
I think that looks like it. Like, I don't think that leads to the confusion and the identity crises if they're just allowed. In fact, I don't think. I don't have a son, but I don't think I would show automatic anger or some sort of negativity if he really loves his mom and he tries on his mom's shoes and puts, let's say lipstick on or something, because mom every day puts lipstick on, and you know, the mom is with the kid, like the father is with the child, but in a different way. Like the mom is with the kid, and if love is coming through where it's a little bit of mimicry, then they're also most likely going to mimic things that I do as well. And so I don't think that I would have a, and I do see the point in saying we need to stop just being so afraid of certain things, like maybe let's say afraid of my kid turning out gay or something like that. We need to, yeah, I agree with
And the
that part.
second,
Hmm.
yeah, the second part of the question is under the current system that we have,
Okay.
is that not actually creating more confusion?
Is the sister? I don't know. I don't
And
know.
and so when that kid, let's say the boy, when he does put
Hmm.
on the shoes or the thing, or you know starts crying or wants affection, whatever that is,
Right.
when they start doing the thing and currently are being told you can't do that, that's
Okay. So
what
that's the
girls
system.
do,
Okay.
right? So under the guise of those expectations, those rules, that box that we have to fit into,
Hmm.
is that not create more confusion?
Yeah. No. I think that there was a time when they were sort of allowed to be children, and what we saw at that time was many of them. And it's, you know, right now this sounds misogynist, like toxic masculine or whatever, but they grew out of those things and naturally went more towards playing with bricks and fighting and whatnot on the boys' side, and more so conversational and social and academics on the girl side. I think that there was a time when those things were not so heavy. Here's what I think is the problem, Kyle, is where we are taking the conversation from how do we address this in a healthy way, or and by address this I don't mean a problem, I just mean
Yeah.
address this in general, right? How do we address this in a healthy way, to taking it from that to how do I expose these children to as much that they might be interested in, and then tell them early enough, oh, maybe this is who you really are. That's what I think the problem is. That's what I think creates the sudden increase in gender dysphoria and these things that are very confusing to go through, where it was just not there. And especially in young girls, most gender dysphoria cases were boys for a very long time, and now suddenly with TikTok, Instagram, certain things, and all of these groups where, unbeknownst to your family, which yes, there is a social component to protection, and not sheltering, but general, like education is a form of protection. So when you're educated, when you have more information, you are protected because you can make your own decisions based on knowing stuff instead of based on just, well, let me just find out, right? That's new, and that, you know, like I said, when it leads to surgeries and like the medical stuff is not good in my opinion, in my eyes. It's too early, and it's very hasty, and there are many cases of what's called, like, where you want to detransition, but your body has become so used to the such. And I mean, there's the like they say, the suicidal stuff starts 7 to 10 years after transition for a lot of these kids, and especially a lot of these women,
Yeah.
biological women, whatever.
So like I don't, I fully support um, the LGBTQ, that whole
Hmm.
community. I support freedom of choice.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't, if somebody wants to call themselves whatever gender, I have no issue with that at all. None.
Yeah.
That being said, I will say that I've witnessed from a distance, I've witnessed a friend's daughter go through a lot of this. And I think that a lot of the confusion that we're talking about today
Mm-hmm.
comes from, I'm not sure how old you are, but when I grew up, it was gender was two boxes, male, female.
Right.
Um, and then from there, it was like, if you were, if we're talking about women, it was like, you were the cheerleader, you were um, the book student, you were the athletic one, you were the tomboy, you were the rebel, right? There were only a few boxes, but now I feel like those boxes have all morphed into 1,000 boxes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, I'm a girl or I'm a woman, or even for guys, right? Like it's
Okay.
like I am a man and I like sports, but I'm not the jock, and I like this, but I'm not that. And all of a sudden you start looking at all the boxes and you go, I don't know where I belong,
Right.
because there's so many boxes.
Right.
Um, and I think that also kind of comes almost full circle to what I'm talking about, is that there's this need for belonging,
Right. Which is
and
which is good.
which is natural.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's coming by way of putting ourselves in a box. I need to put myself in this box in order to identify as this thing. And if I can publicly, social media, whatever, say, I am this XYZ ABC, whatever that is, and people are like, oh, me too. And that's how we are conditioning kids and society to connect now, is you got to be in the same box, as opposed to sitting down and having a conversation
Right.
and getting to know somebody and being like, wow, we are completely different, and yet you're amazing and I want to be your
Right.
friend.
Right. And so here that leads me. I'm gonna go ahead and read some of this thing that
Yeah,
helped me
yeah, yeah.
put together my thoughts. I said I was. I'm not gonna start at the beginning because I want to try to get to the relevant parts of
Yeah.
it. I was arrogant in something so extremely basic and intimate that I couldn't see it clearly. I was arrogant in my own self-identity. Growing up in a society that asks you to have a 5-year plan in 10th grade makes you want to decide who you are with conviction and a sense of permanence too early. This may look good on the surface, but it's really not. Reality, objectively, is not like that. You don't decide that a tree should grow up into a specific shape when it's first beginning to grow. You have to give it time. You can influence certain details, but the point is that the reality of the tree is not up to you or how you feel about it. The same can be said about the reality of yourself. It can't be forced into an exact shape. You are who you are, is not something you decide, it's more something you discover. Consciousness observes reality and then seeks understanding. But human beings have started to shun the notion of an objective reality that does that and replace it with a subjective interpretation of reality, which can be different for everyone. And this is simply not true. It's not sound, and it's potentially very destructive to the world we have built. We have crossed the line from reality to fantasy, from truth to interpretation of truth. We have forgotten that we don't know truth, but instead we observe it and learn from it. And there's a little more, but that's sort of the thing, is this notion I'm expressing who I really am is well-meaning, but also destructive in the way that it's being done in certain circles, and I'll say certain very influential circles. You know what I'm saying? And that's sort of my point from earlier about, and what you was talking about now with the fitting in, is what it leads to is, well, you have your friend group in school, right? High school. And this friend group becomes very enamored by this idea of I can be, because it's the rebel factor. You even mentioned the word rebel, and it's sort of the same thing where the tomboyish or the um, effeminate male, those sort of things that used to sort of spring up, and then you sort of grow out of it. Again, I know that's it's looked down upon to say grow out of now, but it's very descriptive of what happened. Um, and with acknowledging that also partially happened because it's like, no, you're not supposed to be like this. But it also the reason part of the reason why that manifested is because of the observation of practical, real, just what happens with human beings is the growing out of that does eventually happen, and whatnot. I'm going off on a tangent. The group of friends all get together and say, oh, well, we're going to join this underprivileged and underrepresented group, and we're going to make this our reality, and I'm going to express who I really am through joining this group, this sort of group identity. And then oftentimes right now, at least here in the US, unbeknownst to their parents, they start on the whole making that a permanent thing and regretting it later. And that's where the destruction comes in.
Yeah. I mean, I like as you were talking, I was just the one word I had in mind was just, with or the idea is just like with age comes wisdom.
Yeah,
Hopefully, hopefully,
hopefully,
not
right.
everybody. Um, so when I look back at who I was, of course it's changed.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
know, one could argue it's grown out of. One could argue it's I've become just wiser. I've become more, as you say, more aware, more conscious.
Right. Well, wisdom is
Um,
growth. I mean,
yeah,
is a product of growth. I mean, mhm.
yeah. Um, I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with bell hooks?
I saw that was on your post,
Yeah.
and it made me interested, but no, I haven't read the material.
So she brings up a really good point. Um, in that, men are very much raised, I mean, society as a whole, but especially men, we are raised in what is, like a dominator model.
Hmm.
And it basically, I mean, the most simplistic version of that is if I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. Um, and she suggests that what we need to do is we need to move to a relationship model.
Yeah, less um like blind competition. I'll say less blind competition because competition by itself is useful, but like this, yeah, what you're talking
Well,
about isn't. Hmm.
yes. Um, but it's, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love competition. That competition
Yeah,
fuels me,
yeah,
but it doesn't fuel me because I'm afraid of losing or I need to win.
no,
It's that competitive. It's more about, it's about the competition, not the result for me.
right.
Right. It's that putting myself up against other people and saying like, okay, how well can I do? But I think that in the relationship model,
Hmm.
that competition would take on a little bit of a different meaning.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is, and this is what I'm trying to incorporate into the world, is if I can build a relationship with you, I get to know who you are, what you're doing in the world, what kind of change you want to create. And if I can connect you through my relationships, and I can introduce you, and I can support you, and eventually you win. And if you win, I win.
Right.
And if I can help 1,000 people, if I can help 1,000,000 people win,
Mm-hmm.
how do I lose?
Right.
I can't.
And the
I
line there
can't.
is between trusting out of naivety and trusting out of courage.
Yeah.
There's something else that Jordan Peterson talks about where there's trusting people will get you burnt, but getting burnt is what teaches you proper discernment. And so at first you trust because you're young and naive, but hopefully you continue to trust after you're burnt the first time, second time, third time, and you start to not trust less, but discern more and see the signs and see the red flags and whatnot. And you can build relationship and build community and protect it without being, super exclusive and destructive and whatnot.
Well, and even when it comes to trust, I don't think it should ever be a that's a whole nother topic, but I don't think that it should be about whether or not you trust or trust less.
Hmm.
I think that it just comes down to learning how to trust better.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's this idea that trust is earned, but
Right. No, I believe trust is practiced, not earned.
the first, even in that, in either case, the and yes, trust is a continuum. It's not a you've got it and therefore it's there. It's an ongoing thing. But the part that we don't talk about is that trust must be earned, is that in order to earn trust, it must be given first. And I think that, yes, we all get burned. We all get burned.
It's a part of the game. Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of learning not how to not trust people.
Right.
It's not saying you burn me and therefore I'm not going to trust anybody else ever again.
Right.
We see that in, especially in relationships.
Man.
Right? Oh, they cheated on me. Therefore, every partner
Right.
I'm ever with, I suspect them of cheating.
We got 10 songs for Men Ain't Shit. We got 10 songs for These Hoes Ain't Loyal. It's just
yeah, exactly. So, but it starts with learning how to trust better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's instead of me giving you the pie, I'm just going to give you a sliver. Right? And
right.
if you take off, you fuck off with that sliver, so be it.
Right.
You've shown me where you're at, and I haven't lost anything because it's like 1% of my pie. No big deal. Whereas, when what you were talking about, like when we trust blindly, we're like, here's the pie. Right. So I don't think it's a matter of trusting and not trusting. I think it's just a matter of we need to learn how to trust better.
Yeah.
And it is a skill. I really think it is a skill.
Yeah, that's why I say it's practiced. And in my sort of view of the greater context you're touching on, building relationships requires trust as a part of as a large part of its foundation. Because without the foundation of trust, then there's too much paranoia, and right there's like it's like the less trust you have, the more potential there is for something to be slightly misinterpreted, and then it all goes to shit. So the thing, what did I want to say? Because I wanted to give a disclaimer before I said it, and now I want to say it, and I'm like, the disclaimer took all my bandwidth.
I do that all the time.
Do you remember how I started?
No.
Damn. Relationships. Trusting. Okay. Betrayal. So getting burned, right? Betrayed or whatever. When the larger, the thing that I want to hit home is when about trust being practiced and not earned. When the understanding is trust is earned, that implies, even without intention, that distrust is automatic. And that's not the way, right? That's the extreme in the other direction, and neither extreme is correct for what we have been born into on this earth, right? You can't just trust everybody, love everybody, kumbaya with everybody. And also, you can't just distrust just because you got burnt or, just because it's dangerous. There's has to be some sort of middle ground where we can come together. And that comes with that discernment, that doing it, that feeling each other out and doing so with the intention of I'm building so that I can give this person the pie and they'll come back and give me my pie later. But yeah.
And I think too that, trust is a major, coming back to men's mental health and just men in general. I think trust is a major, major issue because I've been in countless rooms with men where, the question is posed, who here has trust issues with men? And every single hand in the room goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Every hand goes up. As men, if we can't trust each other, then what can we trust? Who can we trust?
Right.
And and that really plays into what I was talking about just a few minutes ago in that dominator model.
Mm-hmm.
So long as we believe that I win and you lose, or you win and I lose, then we can't trust men because, if you're in a romantic relationship and you've got a buddy, well, who knows what says if he wants to win, he can steal my girl. Right? If I'm in a business partnership, if he wants to win, he can find a way to backdoor it and take all the cash and run or kick me out or whatever that is. And what happens is that we end up with no trust in other men. And without that trust in men, we end up turning to our romantic relationships or our female friends, where that's where we become the dumping, we use them as the dumping ground. That's where we bring all our emotions, all our struggles, all our stuff. And instead of then being the support, the lover, they're the therapist, they're the mother, they're the friend, they're the companion. They're all the things.
Right.
And
which is a lot of pressure on them.
well, it's a lot of pressure, but it's it's roles that they shouldn't be playing. And I think that if men can learn to trust one another, our everything gets better. So I've got a really good friend of mine who, we've known each other for, I'm not sure how long it's been, a year and a half.
Okay.
I trust this guy with my life.
Yeah.
Like anything. I trust him with my girl. I trust him with my money. I trust, like, you name it.
Yeah.
He's got my trust. And because I know that he's there, and because I know that I can talk to him, and I know that he actually fully has my back, it changes everything in my relationship. Everything. It changes how I show up in life. Because it's hard to even put into words how it changes, but everything changes. So, for example, a good example in a relationship, I have no jealousy in my relationship. And it comes from, I believe, a place of being fully grounded.
Okay.
And having that friendship and having that person that I trust outside of the relationship gives me that grounding.
Your friend.
Yeah.
Word.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So whereas in previous relationships, when I didn't have that friendship, I did have issues with jealousy. I had issues with trust. And the reason being was that my everything was, as they say, like all my eggs were in one basket, and it was in the relationship. She was my friend, my confidant. She was my lover. She was my partner. She was my, kind of the mother figure. She was all the things. And if she leaves, I lose everything. And then my world now revolves around this idea that, I need to maintain this relationship because if I lose this, I lose me. But now I'm in a position where it's like I've got people outside of the relationship that are also a rock in my life. So I don't need to worry about, in the same way, I don't need to worry about losing the relationship. Instead, I can just focus on making it a healthy relationship.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you for that insight on your, how you can make some of your values work in your own life. And yeah, I believe the same thing. I think more sort of men's, maybe not necessarily like circle kind of groups, but just where we can, where we where it's free, where we can come together, build trust, learn about grounding oneself in your values, and express the emotions that don't get to be expressed is is a big thing missing in the. I mean, and you know again, there's another thing that's like a whole nother episode worth of conversation. When you don't have time because it's too hard to feed your family, that's a whole nother thing too.
Whole nother conversation. Yeah, for sure.
So
I think though, like to what you were kind of where you were going there, is that if you look back only 40 years, 40 years ago, how many clubs were there that were men only,
I don't know.
right? Whether it
I
was the
wouldn't hear you.
tennis, but just in general though, it's like whether it's the tennis club, whether it's like a legion or a some
Oh,
kind of military club, whether it's
yeah.
the
Probably a lot. I don't know how many.
yeah, even just a gentleman's club, right? I don't know, but I just know that there was a lot. There were entire golf courses that were dedicated to, you had to be a man. Now, in the name of equality,
Right.
and under the guise of, inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
those are no longer.
Okay.
All those male only clubs have now become co-ed.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, what's also happened is that there are women only spaces. There are women only spaces everywhere, and that is considered okay because it's considered to be a safe space. It's for their safety, the security, whatever. And the problem is that if guys try to form a club that's like guys only,
Right.
it gets labeled as sexist and
Right.
exclusionary.
Right. And no, it's just necessary.
But it
Yeah.
is there is an element of it that is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Men need a place where they can go and be with other men, and like you said, it doesn't have to be and shouldn't have to be in a brotherhood setting where you're doing the shadow work and all the stuff. You should be able to go to a place where it's just men and just hang out and connect, and whether it's um, playing pool, in a pool, or having a drink. We need those spaces for men's mental health. We need those
Right.
spaces where they can be. I've been at bachelor parties where we were out camping and it was just guys, and we were all together having a great time, all kinds of conversations, all kind of laughs, and all of a sudden two women infiltrated our camp. That dynamic never came back to where it was.
Right.
There were at least two men who were off pursuing the women the rest of the weekend. And every time the girls came in, the dynamic would change. So there's something to be said about being in a room with just men without women. It's not about exclusion. It's actually more about inclusion of men.
Right. I mean, if we're going to be equal and there are all of these free programs where women can come and create and be a part of safe spaces, then if we're going to be equal, we should be able to do the same. And there are clear psychological benefits to us being able to do the same over the long term. Um, yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure. And I've definitely experienced certain things myself, more so like in college, where I'm a rapper. I will be rapping when this video is posted to the YouTube channel. There will be a rap verse inserted somewhere in the 10-15 minute mark.
Nice.
And when me and my guys got together and we, just rapping, there was something about it that you can't have girls in there. I mean, femcs, female MCs, maybe, yeah, maybe some of the time, or some, but not all of them, because there's a thing. I don't know. It's just a thing that it's not about it feels better. It's about it creates a different in atmosphere that is beneficial for us to experience. And yeah, we need more of that. Kyle Hamer, it has been a blast talking to you, my brother. It's
Sure.
great to meet you officially, outside of text, outside of typing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, quick thing, where can people connect with you if they want to connect with you? And oh, what does love mean to you? In reverse order. What does love mean to you? Then where can people connect with you?
I feel like love to me is inclusion. It is opening up oneself, whether it's mental, emotional, your physical space, and letting people in. Yeah. It's letting people in. That's really what love is. Letting people in.
Wonderful. And where can people find you at?
Well, I'm on the usual socials. Facebook, Instagram. All my handles are a little bit different, so I'll have to put them in to the thing. And talking about community, the one thing that I'm been working on, and I'm actually launching it Monday. I know I'm not sure when this is going live, but
It'll
I'll
it'll
just
be not to cut you off. It'll be a little bit like probably late September, early October, or something like that. I've recorded a bunch all at once, and so they come out every Friday. So
yeah. So by the time this is live, my community will be live,
yeah,
and so I'm launching on Monday a men's membership based community. That is exactly what I just talked about. It's a place to come together. There's the opportunity to do the growth work if you want to, but it's also going to be a place where you can skill build, network, connect. There's going to be group coaching, masterminds, a whole host of things all under one roof. It's going to be inclusive to everybody.
word.
Um,
I would
so
actually
that's
love to talk to you about that too, because um, like if you have a space in there for somebody to guide meditations, either weekly or just sometimes or whatever, we should talk about that.
well, yeah, and my whole philosophy, going back to everything that we've been talking about, is a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So it comes back to that. I want to give everybody a stage if they want, so that they can find that place. They can it helping them to get to where they want to be. So if you would love to come in and host a, whether it's a weekly, monthly, whatever it is, meditation, that would be fantastic. Because that's exactly what the whole thing is about. Um, it's a place to come and find what you're looking for, and it's also a place to come in and provide what you'd like to give. So that would be an
Awesome.
honor. Yeah.
Shout out to you, man, doing the thing, being the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Well, it took me 4 decades to kind of come around to this idea that if I can't find it, I gotta make it.
Yep,
You
that's for
know.
sure. That's a
Um,
manifest. That's how this podcast manifested as well.
yeah.
It's not
And
just a, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say the other thing is too is that just the other day I've started a Facebook community as well. It's open. It's actually a little more geared towards women, in that it's the place where we can have that conversation on both sides of the fence. So that's the other place. So
Awesome. All of these things will be in the description of this video. Make sure you connect with Kyle if you so choose, and give him a round of applause. Give me a round of applause. Round of applause for everybody. Give yourself one. Thank you so much again for coming on the Expression of Love podcast, and we will see you all in the next one.
Expressions of love.